remember the last day of school like it was yesterday. The halls were empty and the classrooms were silent. As I made my way to my locker to clean it out, I heard a faint whisper coming from the end of the hallway. I couldn't quite make out what it was saying, but it sent shivers down my spine. I tried to shake off the feeling and focus on getting my things together, but then I heard the whisper again, this time louder and more urgent. I turned around, but there was no one there. That's when I felt a cold breath on the back of my neck, and the lights in the hallways flickered and went out. Panic set in as I fumbled for my phone to use it as a flashlight. As the light illuminated the hallway, I saw dark figures moving at the end of the corridor. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized I was not alone. I started to run, but the figures were getting closer and closer. Just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, the lights flickered back on and everything was back to normal. I never looked back as I ran out of the school, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister had been lurking in the shadows on the last day of school. The experience haunted me for weeks, and I couldn't help but wonder if there was more to that last day than met the eye. It felt like a chilling omen, a foreboding sign of something ominous yet to come. Even now, the memory sends a shiver down my spine, and I can't help but feel a lingering sense of unease whenever I think about it. It was the last day of school, and excitement filled the air as students eagerly anticipated the start of the summer break. The hallways were abuzz with chatter and laughter, and everyone seemed to be in high spirits. As I made my way to my final class, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief that the school year was finally coming to an end. However, as I entered the empty classroom, a strange feeling washed over me. The atmosphere seemed unusually still, and an eerie silence hung in the air. I brushed off the feeling and took my seat, trying to focus on the teacher's end-of-year speech. As the minutes ticked by, I noticed that the room was growing increasingly cold, despite the warm weather outside. I glanced around and saw that my classmates were shivering too, their breath forming misty clouds in the air. Confused, I turned to the window to see if it had been left open, but to my surprise, it was tightly shut. Suddenly, a chilling gust of wind swept through the room, blowing papers off desks and causing lights to flicker. The teacher looked visibly alarmed and quickly ushered us out of the classroom, explaining that there seemed to be a problem with the heating system. As we made our way into the hallway, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. A sense of unease gnawed at me, and I noticed that the other students looked equally unsettled. Just then, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the corridor, sending shivers down my spine. We all froze in our tracks, trying to locate the source of the sound. The scream seemed to be coming from the end of the hallway, where the lights flickered ominously. Without warning, the lights went out completely, plunging us into darkness. Panic set in as we fumbled for our phones to use as flashlights. As the dim light illuminated the hallway, we saw shadowy figures darting in and out of sight. Whispers and eerie laughter filled the air, and a sense of dread settled over us like a suffocating blanket. Just as the fear reached its peak, the lights flickered back on and everything returned to normal. The teachers quickly herded us out of the building, assuring us that it was just a power outage. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something inexplicably sinister had occurred on that last day of school. After that day, rumors spread like wildfire among the students about strange occurrences on the last day of school. Some claimed to have seen ghostly figures in the hallways, while others swore they heard whispers echoing through the empty classrooms. As the summer break began, I tried to put the unsettling events behind me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. I made it a point to avoid the school building during the break, but one evening, as I passed by, I couldn't help but notice a figure standing in the window of my old classroom. I froze in my tracks, my heart pounding in my chest. The figure seemed to be watching me, its features obscured by the dim light. I blinked, and it was gone. But the feeling of being watched lingered, and I hurried away, unable to shake the sense of unease that settled over me. To this day, I can't explain what happened on the last day of school, but the memory of that eerie day still sends chills down my spine. It felt as though the school itself had been alive with a malevolent presence, and I couldn't help but wonder if there was more to that last day than met the eye. It was the last day of high school, and the campus was abuzz with excitement and a palpable sense of relief as students prepared to bid farewell to their high school years. The hallways were filled with the sound of laughter, and the air was tinged with a mix of nostalgia and anticipation for the future. As I made my way to my final class, I couldn't help but feel a surge of emotion as I took in the familiar sights and sounds of the school that had been my home for the past 4 years. The day was filled with hugs, high fives, and promises to keep in touch as we all prepared to go our separate ways. However, as the afternoon sun began to dip below the horizon, the atmosphere shifted from one of celebration to one of fear and uncertainty. The sound of shattered glass echoed through the hallways, followed by the blaring of alarms. Confusion and panic spread like wildfire as students and teachers alike tried to make sense of the commotion. Suddenly, an announcement crackled over the intercom, urging everyone to stay in their classrooms and lock the doors. It was then that the reality of the situation dawned on us. There was an intruder on campus. As fear coursed through my veins, I huddled with my classmates, the once familiar classroom now feeling like a vulnerable fortress. We listened intently for any sign of the intruder, our hearts pounding in our chests. Minutes felt like hours as we waited for the all clear, the tension in the air almost suffocating. Finally, the sound of approaching sirens and the sight of flashing lights outside the classroom gave us a glimmer of hope that help was on the way. After what felt like an eternity, the authorities secured the campus and the intruder was apprehended. As we were escorted to safety, the relief was palpable, but the sense of security that once enveloped the school was shattered. The last day of high school, which was meant to be a day of joy and celebration, had turned into a harrowing and unforgettable experience. It was a stark reminder of the fragility of safety and the unpredictability of life. In the aftermath of the incident, the school community came together to support one another, offering comfort and reassurance in the face of fear and uncertainty. It was a day that none of us would ever forget, and it served as a poignant reminder of the importance of resilience and solidarity in the face of adversity. On the last day of school, a heavy fog settled over the campus, casting an eerie atmosphere as the students prepared to leave for the summer. As the day progressed, strange occurrences began to unfold. Students reported hearing unsettling whispers echoing through the empty hallways, and some claimed to have seen fleeting shadows out of the corner of their eyes. As the final bell rang, the students hurried to leave the school, eager to escape the unsettling atmosphere. But as they made their way to the exit, they found the doors inexplicably locked. Panic spread among the students as they frantically searched for a way out, but every exit was sealed shut. Just as fear began to consume them, the fog outside the window thickened, obscuring their view of the outside world. The temperature in the building dropped, and the whispers grew louder, sending shivers down their spines. It felt as though an unseen presence was closing in on them. In a moment of desperation, the students heard a voice, barely audible above the din. The school janitor, Mr. Jenkins, had always been a comforting presence in the school. He led the students to a hidden emergency exit, but as they followed him, they realized that he was leading them deeper into the dark and deserted parts of the school. Suddenly, the students found themselves trapped in a maze of corridors, with Mr. Jenkins' sinister laughter echoing around them. It became clear that Mr. Jenkins had orchestrated the haunting as a way to lure the students into his twisted game. As they struggled to escape, they realized that Mr. Jenkins was not the kind and unassuming janitor they had always known. In a heart-pounding race against time, the students had to outsmart Mr. Jenkins and find their way out of school before it was too late. They encountered numerous obstacles and traps that Mr. Jenkins had set up, making their escape seem impossible. As tensions rose and fear gripped them, they relied on their wits and teamwork to navigate the treacherous maze of the school's hidden passages. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the students managed to elude Mr. Jenkins and reach the school's main entrance. They bursted out into the sunlight, relieved that they escaped the clutches of the malevolent janitor. As they caught their breath and tried to make sense of the nightmarish ordeal, they realized that their last day of school had turned into a chilling test of survival. The harrowing experience left a lasting impact on the students, reminding them to be wary of those who may not be what they seem. It was a terrifying and unforgettable end to their school year, leaving them with a newfound appreciation for the importance of staying vigilant and trusting their instincts. The last day of school was supposed to be a day of celebration, but for me, it turned into a nightmare that still haunts me to this day. As the bell rang and the final classes ended, the excitement in the air was palpable. Students were making plans for the summer, and the teachers were bidding us farewell with warm smiles. As I walked through the emptying halls, a feeling of unease washed over me. It was as if the walls themselves were whispering secrets that I couldn't quite comprehend. I tried to shake off the sensation, but it lingered like a dark cloud over my thoughts. As I reached my locker to gather my belongings, I heard a faint sound coming from the end of the hallway. It was a soft, melodic humming that sent chills down my spine. I looked around, but there was no one in sight. The air grew colder, and the humming seemed to grow louder, filling the empty corridor with an eerie presence. I quickly packed my things and made my way towards the exit, but the humming followed me, echoing through the empty halls. Just as I reached the school's entrance, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the building into darkness. Panic gripped me as I reached for my phone to use as a flashlight. As the dim light illuminated the hallway, I saw a figure standing at the end of the corridor, barely visible in the shadows. It was a woman, her face obscured, and her humming had turned into a haunting melody that seemed to seep into my bones. I wanted to run, but I was frozen in place, unable to tear my gaze away from the figure. Her presence felt suffocating, and I could feel a sense of dread building within me. Just as I summoned the courage to move, the figure vanished into thin air, leaving behind an unsettling silence. I stumbled out of the school and into the bright sunlight, but the encounter lingered in my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that something malevolent had been lurking within the school's walls on the last day of classes. To this day, the memory of that encounter sends shivers down my spine, and I can't help but wonder about the school's secrets hidden in the shadows. That experience changed my perspective on the school, and I couldn't shake off the feeling that there was more to the story. Over the summer, I researched the history of the school and discovered that it was built on the site of an old cemetery. Stories of unexplained occurrences and ghostly sightings filled the pages of local folklore, and I couldn't help but wonder if the apparition I encountered was connected to the school's dark past. As the new school year began, I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease, and I made it a point to avoid being alone in the school's hallways. The memory of the encounter stayed with me, serving as a chilling reminder that some mysteries are best left unsolved. Even now, as I pass by the school, I can't help but feel a lingering sense of trepidation, knowing that something inexplicable had occurred on that last day of school, and that the truth behind it may never be fully revealed.